What up, folks? I'm back once again doing another video game review, and I'm reviewing the game Final Fight, and it was made by Capcom and was first released on the arcade back in the early 90s. And it was later released for the Super Nintendo and for the Sega CD. The premise of Final Fight is that Mike Hagar, who is a mayor and a former pro wrestler, get a call from a street gang saying that they kidnapped his daughter, and he goes out and rescue her, and he receives the help of a couple other friends that he knows who joins him. And with the arcade version, is a two-player beat 'em up, while in the Super Nintendo version, just a one-player game. And one thing you would notice about Mike Hagar is the fact that he uses wrestling moves because of the fact that he was a former pro wrestler in the premise, and he uses like pile drivers, clotheslines, drop kicks, stuff like that. And he reminds me of one wrestling tag team of the APA or the Acolytes. Some of you who are wrestling fans know exactly who I'm talking about, so I don't have to necessarily explain who they are. You know what I'm saying? And one thing about there's Cody and the other guy, they uses too much martial arts, just a street punch. As far as the third playable character, I forget his name. Anybody can mention the name of the third character in the comment section. And one thing that's in the game is like a bonus section where you destroy a card that belonged to one of the thugs, and when you pretty much complete this particular bonus stage, you'll leave. As far as the character that you pick, he'll leave, and the thug will come see the damaged card, and he will cry over his car. It's kind of funny, you know. And the bonus stage is practically the same one that you find in Street Fighter 2, where you destroy a car. The two main differences are the location and the fact that in Street Fighter you don't use a lead pipe. And like as far as the final boss goes in the Final Fight, is that he's not necessarily a cakewalk, but he's not like challenging or insanely tough either. One thing that I can remember about him since I fought him once, he's just more on the annoying side than anything else. As far as the weapons are concerned, one thing you can use either like a knife or a sword or a lead pipe. Now, as far as the lead pipe and the sword are concerned, you use them the same way. It's just that, of course, you say, you use. But what I'm saying is like you pretty much swing them the same way. Is what I'm saying. There's no that's the only thing that separates those two from like the knife. All you do is like throw it. You throw the knife. If an enemy is far away, if you're closer, you just pretty much shank them. You know. And pretty much some people might complain about the fact that you only use like 3 weapons, which is not that big of a deal because all 3 are effective, even though all 3 have their strengths and weaknesses. And some might complain that you can't carry the weapon to the next section of the stage or to another stage after you beat the boss. And my reaction to that is like, it's not that big of a deal, mainly because you're gonna find them in every single stage of this game, so it's not that big of a deal. Again, so some like, but with most people, they don't they don't even pay that any attention, you know. It's kind of like, and one thing that I've noticed about Final Fight is that this is the first game where a playable character used pro wrestling moves, and no other game that, to my knowledge, has done this before Final Fight. Because with most beat 'em ups, like majority of the characters use martial arts, some type of martial arts. But now, as far as the game itself, it is one of the best beat 'em ups that I played. As far as the graphics and the gameplay, well, I'll talk about the gameplay later. But as far as the graphics and the level design, it is pretty good. And when it was ported to the Super Nintendo and the Sega CD, they really hasn't changed much as far as level design as a whole. But it still holds up, especially when you look at the Super Nintendo. It has that particular system had other beat 'em up classics like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, and Batman Returns. And it's also had, as far as Final Fight is concerned, it also has good gameplay too. And the controls pretty much translated well into the Super Nintendo and Sega CD from the standpoint that they all the characters kept all their moves from the arcade version. And that's something in my mind that was rare back then, because some of the moves that a particular character used from the arcade version was never used in when it was ported to a particular system, whether it was like Super Nintendo, Genesis, NES, whatever the case may be. They did. That's the one thing that stands out in my mind with that. And the music, it's pretty good. I'm not gonna sit here and say that this soundtrack to Final Fight sucks, because it don't. And you're not gonna hear one bad, awful piece to the soundtrack. And one thing I can honestly say, that there's three main complaints to Final Fight in terms of the Super Nintendo version. The first one is the fact that there's no two-player co-op, only one player. The third character from the arcade is not in it, and the industrial area is not a playable section in the game. But they addressed that particular. The two-player co-op was pretty much addressed in the sequels for the Super Nintendo, and all three were addressed when the Sega CD version that came out. So, like, as far as the score, I would definitely give the Super Nintendo version an 8, mainly for like three reasons. The controls are kind of stiff, but it's not that big of a deal. But I do have to bring up the fact that there's no two-player co-op and the third character is missing. I honestly wish that those two things were added to the Super Nintendo version, but for some reason they didn't add it. I don't know why, but they should have. You know. Now with the Sega CD, they did. I would give that one a 9, and the arcade version a 9. Mainly because the the Sega CD version of Final Fight is is more faithful to the arcade than the Super Nintendo version for the three complaints that I mentioned. Now, with that being said, if Final Fight is your favorite beat 'em up, you can mention it in the comment section, or if you have 5 memories of Final Fight as a whole, whether you play the arcade version, the Sega CD version, or the Super Nintendo version. I want to hear from you also. Plus, you could also mention if you like the sequels to Final Fight on the Super Nintendo if you want. And just don't forget to click the thumbs up button if you like this video. And don't forget to subscribe. This is your boy, Big Metroid Fan 12 signing off.